Decision 2020 now, and the race for president. It's still a tight one. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sheba Russell.
And I'm Jennifer Bellamy. The nation continues waiting on a number of battleground states that have yet to be called at this hour, including Georgia.
All eyes on Georgia still. The Secretary of State just telling NBC News that 2% of the state's absentee mail-in ballots still need to be counted and that it will not change the outcome. Georgia expected to have a result by the end of the day. That's according to the Secretary of State. Right now, President Trump is leading Georgia by just over 100,000 votes.
Let's go now live to Liza Lucas in Gwinnett County at the elections office there with more on a software issue that's left. Liza, is this tens of thousands of ballots that have not been tallied?
That's right. The work is continuing here in Gwinnett County. And actually, I just spoke with a Gwinnett County representative who tells me that the number of impacted ballots could be as few as 3,000, could be beyond that. They are still working to find out that information and see which ballots need to be reviewed. So a little bit about that software glitch. Normally, what happens when it comes to the ballot process and absentee ballots in particular, if a ballot is marked clearly, it's scanned without any problems. But if there's an issue with how the ballot was filled out, the software is supposed to send the ballot to be held for adjudication. Now, that is when a panel made up of representatives from both major parties plus an election official reviews the ballots in question. Now, county officials told us that for more than half of Gwinnett's 120,000 absentee by mail ballots, a software glitch showed the adjudication process is pending, though it was already completed. Now, because these ballots are scanned together in batches, they must remain together even if there's only one that needs to be reviewed. So again, we're told that the majority, they don't anticipate having to review. Right now, that number could be as few as 3,000. It could be beyond that. They are still working through the process here in Gwinnett, but hope to have an update for us later today. We'll keep you posted on that front.
All right, Liza Lucas in Gwinnett County for us. Thank you so much, Liza. Our Joe Ripley continuing our team coverage from the elections office in Decatur, where DeKalb County officials are also reporting thousands of absentee ballots that still need to be counted. Joe, what can you tell us at this hour?
Well, the count for those thousands of provisional and absentee ballots here in DeKalb County just picked back up about a half hour ago. So that count is back on, though the specific number has not been told to us by elections officials. The good news, though, is that they expect to have that sorted and counted for by the end of the day. Elections Director Erica Helmington earlier today took me through the process. The ballots must be verified with staff comparing the signatures on those ballots with those in the system 3 times. After ballots are verified, they're taken to a room where workers put them in order by precinct. The ballots are then locked in a cage, rolled down to a warehouse, opened, and then checked again. After that, the ballots are taken to the adjudication room. That's where staff check for any outstanding red flags like blank ballots or signature issues. Security personnel accompanies those ballots at each checkpoint throughout this process. Ballots are then put into the system and officially counted. I spoke earlier today with Samuel Tillman on the elections board. He says he knows the country is watching this process right now with big elections at stake. Of course, we will keep you posted on the results and totals as we get those here on air, as well as the 11Alive News app.
I'm Christy Diaz here at the 11Alive touchscreen board, where I've been monitoring the county by county results. Right now, you can see this is a look statewide. The blues and the reds indicate whether the county went more Democratic or more Republican. Right now, there's about 102,000 votes rather separating the president and Joe Biden. But it looks like our Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, is about to give us an update. Let's listen in.
All right, again, as Christy mentioned, let's get you out to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger right now.
Hopefully that's how they had it.
Yeah, right? What's gonna happen?
I would just leave it be. I don't.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
All right. While we wait for the Secretary of State to begin his media briefing, he's walking over to the podium right now.
I really like how you
Let's
all
listen
play
in
nice
on the
in
update on
sandbox
counting
and
here in the state.
Don't touch each other's mics, so it's professional courtesy. So we're starting the day off right. So Anyway, welcome everyone. I know that every one of you have had long nights and probably early mornings. And we're excited to report that the people of Georgia have spoken. It has never been easier to vote in Georgia. Elections matter. We held an election that was a safe, sensible, and responsible election for every eligible voter to access. Your vote counts. Perhaps for the first time, we had an election day in Georgia where the wait times were below 10 minutes across the state, and we did that while experiencing record-breaking turnout, handling unprecedented numbers of absentee ballot requests than ever before, implementing a new voting system, and adapting to the requirements of holding an election during a pandemic and recruiting new poll workers. Elections matter, and that was a total team effort. First, I'd like to thank every early voter who heard our call and voted early. You are the reason why Georgia had success. Thank you to every election official who met every struggle and every challenge. In the middle of a pandemic, it was tough, and we've overcome all the challenges. Great job. Thank you. Your vote counts. As we often pointed out, it is counties in Georgia that actually administer the elections, and all Georgians owe a debt of gratitude to those dedicated public servants across the state who executed their duties well, and in most cases, flawlessly. Over 50,000 Georgians stepped forward to man the polls in their communities after many of our longtime workers had to step out because they were in a population that was vulnerable to COVID. Our job isn't done yet, though, and I want to thank my Deputy Secretary of State, Jordan Fuchs, for leading a great team, leading on our public service announcements that help shape and change voter behavior from in-person voting to early voting, to Gabriel Sterling, who managed the implementation of the state's new voting system, the largest of its kind in the history of this country. And thank you to Ryan Germany for protecting our state law. Judges are not legislators. Jordan, Gabe, and Ryan, thank you. You are tireless professionals who are proudly serving Georgia. And lastly, I would like to thank my entire team in the Secretary of State's office for their tireless work throughout the entire year. Elections matter. Counties made sure that voters have had access to many early voting locations, including mega sites like the State Farm Arena over a 3-week period. Your vote counts. I'm happy to report that voters have responded favorably to using our new ballot marking devices. They found it easy to use, appreciated the security of a paper ballot, and liked seeing their ballots tabulated by the scanner. This election puts to rest the debates inflamed by those in our state, or not in our state, who have looked to sow doubt about our systems, and those who have wrongly claimed there's a lack of access to voting. Elections matter. Completing this general election is a huge hurdle crossed, but it's far from the end of our work. We will have, immediately starting today, working towards certifying this election and then preparing for state and local runoff elections on December 1st, and then the September Senate runoff election between Senator Loeffler and Raphael Warnock on January 5th. This will require a monumental effort because we have a short window to get out absentee ballots for the December runoff to give voters time to return them. My team has sent reminders to counties to get all, let me repeat, all of our results counted today. Every legal vote will count. And I know that many of you probably have some questions. Justin.
You're a supporter of President Trump, but you're also the state's top election official. What do you say to people who hear the president speak and are worried that votes counted today, votes counted after election day, aren't legal?
Well, I want everyone to know, the sound of my voice, that every legal vote in Georgia will count. And right now we have about 200,000 ballots that are left to be counted. With the absentee ballot process, counties worked on scanning those as many as they could. And then there are also about 40 to 50,000 early votes that need to be counted. Every legal vote will be counted.
So is the president correct there?
We're saying that every legal ballot will be counted in Georgia because that's our process and we follow state law.
I hear you say that you want counting to be done today. Is that realistic in counties with tens of thousands of outstanding absentee ballots, counties run elections? I don't know if they'll get it done today. I know you said you communicated with the counties asking them to complete it today, but is that actually possible?
We're pushing really hard for that. If we can get that down, if we don't get it there, but we get the number so small that then there's no question of who actually the winner is, I think that'll be helpful. Really remove a lot of those questions that people might have. Yes, ma'am. That'll be something I'll get with our election team, and we'll get that out as soon as we have that information.
There's word that the USPS was supposed to do a sweep of their facilities, make sure all the absentee ballots had been delivered, and then in some places that didn't take place. Do you know if that happened here in Georgia? Is that any concern?
Well, it would always be a concern. We want to make sure everything gets to us. Don't have anything specific on that. But that's why we also instituted the absentee ballot drop boxes. Our concern actually was that voters were way too long and then it'd be too late to mail, and that's why we had the absentee ballot drop boxes, which was very well received by voters in Georgia.
So you don't have the word that took place?
Yeah, I don't have anything specific, but as soon as we do, we'll circle back and get that information out to you. Can I get with this, ma'am? Well, it's several counties, but we know that DeKalb, Fulton, Forsyth, even has 7,000 voters. So it's really, it's something when you have such a large number of absentee voters and then you have some early votes, it's really multiple counties, and we're just knocking those down one at a time.
What can you speak to the process of absentee ballots? I know that the timing is kind of a moving target. Today, but for those who may be wondering why they're not done, can you kind of speak to the delay and difficulties of absentee ballots?
Yeah. So the state election board gave the counties the authority that they could begin the process of scanning the absentee ballots, which is very helpful. So I know that down in Muskogee County and Richmond County, they were really current with everything they had received, but then all of a sudden we also had additional ballots come in on Monday and then Tuesday, so they're being dropped in. So they had to scan those. And so they'll be getting that as soon as they can, but it is a 2-page ballot. It just takes longer to get those ready for the scanning process. Is there another question back there? Well, I know that right now that we have, my numbers here were 52 to 54,000 in DeKalb. Right now we have 74,000 approximately Fulton County absentees and 43,000 early votes in Fulton County. And I have about 7,000 right now in Forsyth. We can get you the entire list because just we make sure we include all the counties.
Secretary, can you walk through what the rest of the election process looks like from the military ballots coming in to the audit to the certification process? What's the next part before we can say Georgia's certified?
Well, the next process obviously will be to make sure we get all the ballots counted, then also the UOCAVA, the overseas military ballots, to get those in and have them incorporated in the vote totals. We're going to begin the risk limiting audit process later this week, which is really important. So many people are not aware of that. This is the first time we're doing a statewide audit. And so what that will really give you, first of all, we have, I think, a higher confidence of voters. I know there's a lot of information out there, a lot of misinformation out there, and some of it's just lack of knowledge, and we understand that. And that's why the risk limiting audit, what that will do will verify results. So if there's a race that was, say, reported a 51-49, when we do the audit, then we can verify what the result is, and we have over a 90% confidence level. That gives people additional assurance. I think also having that paper ballot, voters were very comfortable. That just gave them that comfort feeling that looked at before they cast their ballot, and that's a good thing also. Then by Friday, November 13th, we then will have the certification. So nothing gets certified until after we do the risk limiting audit.
And then with the presidential race probably going to be so close, and even some down ballot races that may be within the margin, can you talk about what the procedures are?
Well, if there's a race that was in 0.5%, it is your right as the candidate that is close but but not over the top, that you could ask for a recount. So we actually could have a request for, say, a state representative, county commission race, or any race that's within 0.5%, and we'll just wait till we get every ballot counted, and that's why it's very important that we follow through the process. It'll be actually pulling out, running those through, and then it'll be actually seeing where that brings us, and then you're looking at the words that are on the ballot at some point.
Mr. Secretary, can you explain what you know about what's happening in Gwinnett County? Apparently they're having some issues with scanning or getting the rescan thousands of ballots.
Well, if they do, then they'll follow through that. That's the advantage of having the verifiable paper ballot, that you can rescan that. But that's why if some of the ballots do kick out, and the reason they kick out is everyone, if they don't fill out the ballot correctly, or they put an X, or they circle a name. That's why we have the adjudication panels of a Republican, Democrat, and then the election official, to have 3 sets of eyes on there to verify that. So we want at least a 2-1 adjudication vote on each ballot, so we can make sure that we capture the correct voter intent.
If there are legal challenges made to votes cast before 7 o'clock yesterday, absentee ballots, will your office in the state defend those ballots against legal challenges?
Yeah, we want to make sure that we follow state law. We are always going to look at what is the state law, and that's why Ryan Germany, our legal counsel, can answer any legal questions you have. But we want to make sure the law is very clear, and we follow the state law, and we don't believe that judges should legislate.
I could just get a quick assessment from you of the timing that this is taking with the count. Is this taking longer than you expected to take, and why?
Oh no, it's really going much quicker, and that's why we're really pleased with the state election board allowing us to scan that. If you look at some of these states, this morning is when they actually opened up their absentee ballot, boxes, and that's when they started actually the process of separating out the absentee ballots. That's a very extensive process, verifying the signature and going through there, separating it out. We have saved days and days. You're going to be waiting a long time in some of these states, much to many people's consternation, because we understand it's a close election.
You're saying this is right on schedule?
Yeah, we're doing fine, and we're really pleased with. We'll be off everyone's radar, and they'll be worried about the states up north.
Your website doesn't keep up with the absentee ballot department.
Right. Yeah. As it's getting reported, then it'll be just added to that total.
So how do private citizens keep up with that?
It's just because it's a process, and we just keep on adding that, and then eventually, when we have them all done, you'll know that we'll notify or put a note there that these are the final totals for that particular county.
We got time for one more
Well, yes, sir.
Archie with Next Star. Our question was about rejected ballots. I know we talked about that last week. Now that these are coming in, where are we on that? You said about 1% last time. Have you heard anything about rejected ballots, and what happened to those ballots?
Well, yes. Last time we actually had about 1%, but of that, probably 75% of those rejected ballots were actually received late. So very few of those actually were rejected by the adjudication panel. When they actually looked down at that, all 3 of the folks, or 2 out of the 3 folks, were saying, yeah, they really wanted Mary for this race here. They really wanted Bob for that race there, and that's a good thing. So very little of the actual ones that get through the adjudication panel are being rejected. So thank you very much. As we get more information, we'll get that to you. If you have any legal questions, Ryan Germany's here, and we're going to get these results out to you as soon as we can. Thank you very much.
Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger offering his briefing this morning on the election. And as we are still waiting to find out who our next president will be, Georgia has been all of the talk. Brad Raffensperger, just about a half hour before he provided that briefing, told NBC News that 2% of the mail-in absentee ballots still needed to be counted, but he sounded very hopeful there. Jennifer Bellamy saying that they are hoping to be off everyone's radar and that the rest of the nation can focus on the North as they are busy trying to count those ballots. He did tell NBC News that he is hoping to have an outcome by the end of today for Georgia.
Yeah, and that's what one of the reporters asked, how realistic is that for them with the number of votes that are still outstanding? And he says that that's what they're pushing for as hard as they can to get all of those numbers in so that we can have some results. He's also said that he doesn't think that the results that we do receive will make much of a difference, but that remains to be seen as these counties continue their work counting these ballots.
At last check, between Biden and Trump, only over 100,000 votes separated both men. Trump on top, 50 to 48%. Let's bring in Mike Hassinger right now, veteran of GOP politics in Georgia, one of our political analysts. Mike, were you watching this press conference by the Secretary of State?
Yes, I was paying close attention to it.
What do you make of the Secretary's comments this morning?
Well, nobody expected Georgia to be quite the battleground state that it came down to. Literally, this has been a coin toss where the coin has landed on its edge. And in a very close election, you need to do one thing as an elections administrator. You need to make sure that your results are credible. They're believed and trusted by both sides. So he is, Secretary Raffensperger is trying to set expectations and be completely transparent about what is normally an arcane and sort of boring process about where your ballot goes. Most people don't pay attention to what happens to their ballot after they turn it in at the local precinct. This time they want to know when it's been tabulated, what tabulated means, how it's been counted, when it's been counted, did it count? And with all eyes on Georgia at the moment, Secretary Raffensperger is going to have to do a very good job of reassuring people that this is our process, we're sticking with it, and we're going to follow through with it. We'll have our results very soon. That's his goal.
The Secretary has said that he doesn't think any of these outstanding ballots will change what we are seeing in terms of the results, but many counties do have outstanding ballots. So what are you expecting in terms of what we could see with the presidential race and any of these other races that we have seen and that we've been tracking overnight?
Well, any election in Georgia where the result is within 0.5%, the losing candidate has an automatic right to challenge for a recount, and that's where you would get into even more obscure rules about did the voter circle the name, did he put an X when he should have bubbled in the oval, that sort of stuff. Does that ballot therefore count? Was it received late? I don't think there are very many races in Georgia outstanding where that is likely to happen. The exception, of course, is going to be the presidential race. And honestly, I don't expect a challenge from the Biden campaign, not because the race won't be close, but because it looks like he's going to win electoral votes in other states, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan, that would make Georgia unnecessary for him to win the White House. So it'll be very, very close between Biden and Trump in Georgia. I give Trump a slight edge. If you made me place a bet on it, I would bet on Trump, but I wouldn't give you any odds.
Yeah, we can, clearly we cannot call the race here in Georgia just yet. What are you hearing within the Republican Party? I mean, when we hear the Secretary of State say that it's not going to change the outcome, he does not believe it's going to change the outcome, and you have Trump on top right now by over 100,000 votes. What's the chatter within the Republican Party? Are people celebrating already?
People are celebrating, not just in Georgia, but across the nation. Donald Trump overperformed in almost all of the battleground states. And although it looks right now like he does, Joe Biden has the better shot at winning the Electoral College votes and winning the White House, Donald Trump's campaign, in spite of losing, did much better in the battleground states than most pollsters were expecting him or predicting him to do. So even though the overall outcome might have been accurately predicted by the polls, it looks like they were more lucky than they were skilled. And it's a real blow for pollsters. Also, even though it's looking more and more like defeat for Donald Trump nationally, in the areas where he's done very well, you're seeing sort of a retrenching of the Trumpian style of politics. The abrasiveness is not going to go away. The divisiveness is not going to go away. It looks like it works well enough that if we just get more of it, we might actually win with it next time around. And I actually think that's unfortunate.
All right, so what are you expecting in the next few days as we do continue to get some of these results come in? We heard remarks from the president early this morning around 2:30 when he was talking about pretty much calling victory for himself, but also talking about taking this to the Supreme Court. Do you expect that if the votes in the Electoral College do go the Biden way, do you expect that we will see some of that legal action?
Yeah, you'll certainly see challenges, legal challenges filed. There have already been challenges in Pennsylvania over their processes and procedures, mostly about allowing ballots to be mailed in and received up till Friday after Election Day and yet still be counted towards the tally. That could be a legal challenge. Part of what Pennsylvania's rule changes were being challenged by Republicans has already been to the Supreme Court, and they've already refused to hear it or order Pennsylvania to change their rules in any way. But keep in mind, if you do the electoral math, if Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan and Maine go for Biden in their electoral votes, Joe Biden doesn't need Pennsylvania, and there would be no point in challenging any outcome in Pennsylvania. Joe Biden wouldn't need Pennsylvania, Georgia, or North Carolina. So it's really sort of where the numbers are falling is going to dictate what the legal strategy comes to be. It may very well be that fighting for Pennsylvania wouldn't win you the electoral votes you need to win the White House.
Any likelihood of a legal battle coming here, Mike?
Only in the sense of a recount. Again, if Joe Biden doesn't need Georgia, he's very likely to challenge the results, even if he's within a 0.5% margin. What you might see as far as a legal challenge goes is the local races being recounted, and if those recounts have the possibility, if somebody squints at them hard enough, that if you challenge enough local races, could you change the outcome of a presidential race and give it to Biden? I think the Democrats desperately want Georgia to turn blue overnight. And Stacey Abrams has said, for all of her hard work, this is not an overnight process. This is not a single election process. It is an evolutionary process. Georgia continues to evolve with demographic changes and new voters moving in into a less red, more blue state. But that just means that it's ever closer. It's not happening quite yet.
All right, we appreciate your time so much, Mike Hassinger. You had a long night last night, and you're still awake with us, so we appreciate your time. Veteran of GOP politics in Georgia.
Thank you for the coffee.
You got that delivery, huh? All right, great. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, I did.
Let's get out now to our Jerry Carnes, who has been covering Fulton County for us all morning. He's joining us live there. Jerry, what do we know in terms of what Fulton County is looking like in terms of outstanding ballots? And you were also there for that news conference with the Secretary of State's office.
Yes, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger just wrapped up a news conference where he expressed with certainty that all of the ballots here in Georgia would be counted sometime today, and that the election here in Georgia would be certified today. He pointed out that there are still 200,000 votes still to count, some 40 to 50,000 absentee ballots still to count. That's a lot. He pointed specifically to DeKalb County, Forsyth County, and Fulton County, with a lot of ballots still that have not been counted. And there's also the issue in Gwinnett County where they are having some struggles counting the ballots up there. But he still feels like everything will be wrapped up today, that Georgia will be able to certify the elections by the end of the day, and we will know for certain the winners and which presidential candidate won Georgia. He was asked, did this take longer than you would have expected? And he said, no, actually, it went quicker, or is going quicker at the very least. He told us that he feels very good about what has happened, and in fact, he said the way this has worked has actually saved days. This could have gone on for days, and instead he feels like, again, that Georgia will have every vote counted today. So that's what we just heard from Georgia's Secretary of State. We'll see how quickly they can wrap this up.
About comparing Georgia to the other states. Yeah, this could have taken days longer. What's different about what Georgia did compared to other states during this election process?
Well, he pointed out that a lot of it was the training, that they had a lot of people in place yesterday. He talked a lot about yesterday and about how the lines were very short and things moved quickly, and about how many people had voted early or voted absentee and by mail. And he just said that the system in place and the training of the people who took care of all of that, that's what helped things go through quicker than it could have happened. Of course, there were some bumps in the road. There was a water leak at State Farm Arena yesterday that delayed Fulton County from counting some absentee ballots, of course, and they are still continuing to do that at this hour. But he feels overall things went smoothly. And again, he expects it all to be counted today.
Those election workers, they were also able to start opening up those mail-in ballots early and at least begin to process them, not count them as votes yet early on in the process. That is one of the big differences with our state compared to the others, right, Jerry?
Yes, indeed, that was part of the process. Again, he is trying to gather some exact numbers, but thousands of absentee ballots out in DeKalb, Fulton. Early votes still haven't been counted in Fulton County, and then he pointed to Forsyth County as well. Those are some of the areas that have the greatest amount of votes that still at this point have not been counted here in Georgia. But he said that the process goes on, and it is going much smoother, he said, than it could have happened, than he anticipated.
All right, it is 11:57, Jennifer Bellamy. I'm referring to Jennifer across the studio here, Jerry Carnes. We'll say goodbye to you. Thank you so much from the state capitol, reporting on Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's update. I'm hearing my producer to wait. All right, what's happening with the delayed mail, Jerry?
I'm sorry, you back to me, Sheba?
Yes, back to you. Yes. Can you bring us up to date on the delayed mail that the Secretary of State had mentioned in the press conference? This is a little note from our producer here.
Well, what I asked him about was there has been a report that facilities of the United States Postal Service were supposed to be swept to make sure that there were no ballots mailed in still in any of those facilities that were supposed to be delivered. And I asked him if anything like that had happened here in Georgia, and he said that he was not aware of any of that happening here in Georgia. So I think that's what you're referring to, that there has been some indication that some of the facilities throughout the United States, USPS offices, facilities, were not swept to make sure that everything had been sent from there to election offices. We're talking about mail-in ballots there, but he had no indication any of that was here in Georgia.
The big headlines to come out of all of the election coverage pretty much earlier in the day yesterday, Jerry, that a U.S. District Court judge in the D.C. area had ordered a sweep of a number of USPS postal processing facilities all across the country, including Atlanta. And the update today is that that order had not been carried out in a number of cities. It is still unclear whether it actually happened in Atlanta or not. But of course, as we figure out what actually happened here in our city, we bring it to everybody here online, on air, and online at 11alive.com. Jennifer.
All right, thank you so much for being with us. Our online coverage will continue on 11alive.com. We are continuing to track these numbers as they continue to be tallied in the various counties. Again, from Jerry, we are hearing that there are about 200,000 ballots left to be counted out there, so you can count on 11 Alive to bring you the latest information as we get it. Decision 2020, a contentious race to the White House with all eyes on Georgia. Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Bellamy. There are still thousands of votes that need to be counted all across the nation. And right now, President Donald Trump is leading over Democratic candidate Joe Biden in Georgia. 99% of the precincts are reporting, but that does not include ballots that have been mailed in. We're going to go out now live to Jerry Carnes, who was there for an update from Georgia's Secretary of State with how the results stand right now. Jerry?
Hello, Jennifer. The Secretary of State tells us that there are still 200,000 votes outstanding yet to be counted throughout the state of Georgia. Still, he feels confident that the votes will all be counted today and that the election will be certified before the end of the day. He pointed to Fulton County, DeKalb County, and Forsyth County as areas with thousands of votes still uncounted. Still, he says, despite that, the counting process is going faster than it is in many other states.
If you look at some of these states, this morning is when they actually opened up their absentee ballot, boxes, and that's when they started actually the process of separating out the absentee ballots. That's a very extensive process, verifying the signature and going through there, separating it out. We have saved days and days. You're going to be waiting a long time in some of these states, much to many people's consternation, because we understand it's a close election.
So you're saying this is right on schedule?
Yeah, we're doing fine, and we're really pleased with. We'll be off everyone's radar, and they'll be worried about. We're fine.
Again, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger saying that he believes